No, it's good. You may not be able to see it. What's going on, family? We're gonna wait a few minutes for the hundreds of y'all that's gonna show up to join. No, I'm just kidding.
Thousands.
You know what I'm saying?
The millions.
The millions across America for the bishop and I. Nah, just kidding. We know that's not the case. But what's up though? How's everybody doing? Welcome to the bishop and I. For those of you that may join later, oh, I need to tag the bishop. I don't think I tagged the bishop.
I got it.
You got it?
You have to tag me just in case.
My bad, brother. My bad, brother. I forgot to tag the bishop, y'all. We gotta tag the bishop. Gotta tag the bishop, and I gotta tag Sister Carol, and you know what I'm saying? I done forgot. I done forgot. So let me do that, and we're gonna get going. But you know, as I always say, my brother, and I always like to say it because it's true.
Right.
But man, it's always cool to be able to sit with you and just be able to converse, man, and talk about the issues of life with you, brother. You know, I value your opinion. I value your views. Just your life's story, everything. I value it. So that's good. It's good stuff. So thanks for being here. And so as we always start with,
but no, you gotta let me do it.
There we go. My fault, man. You know, I'm all of let's get the business.
Yeah,
Right on.
Most definitely thank God for Pastor Jason Shanley too. You know, the many years that I've known you, and over the years, some of these few years, we've grown closer and been really connected, and we support each other. Most definitely a blessing. And Bible says there's safety in a multitude of counselors. You most definitely one of those counselors that I seek in my circle. You know, you're part of that circle because I value your opinion, your expertise, everything that you bring to the table is important. And so I really appreciate it. And means a lot. It means a lot to me. And even when we debate, they don't see the time when we talk, we debate, you see it. And sometimes you win me over, sometimes we don't, you know, what have you. But we need that. We need that. And we have to be open to hear each other, understand each other. And sometimes, hey, okay, that's a good point. You know, I got to back away from where I was going with that or whatever. Yeah. So I really appreciate that because it brings balance, you know, help us to balance things out. No, it's cool, man. I appreciate it, and so it's good, man. It's always good. I love this time. I look forward to it. Amen. And so I thank God for this time, this hour that we get to share. So as we always do, want to open up with our shirts. My shirt this week is Time Done, and this is really about when will our sentence end, and what time done really. You can look up #Time Done. You can go to Californians for Safety and Justice, or safeandjust.org. And Time Done is a movement that deals with passing Assembly Bill 1076 and AB 1331. These two bills together are going to help millions of families across the state. They're going to streamline an antiquated process to getting people's records expunged. So their thing is, once you're done serving your time, like your records should just drop off. Like you shouldn't have to jump. There's so many hoops to have to jump through to get your record expunged and to get things dropped off your record. And we're saying, Time Done is saying, we have systems now that we're able to do that. Like, let's stop dropping stuff into this. You know, we drop people's lives into this proverbial maze. And it, you know, remember back in the day where they dropped the marble and you drop the marble and it hits the hammer, and then the hammer comes down and it hits this, and then the trap door falls and it hits a couple of things here, and then that releases another marble. And it's this long process of all these systems that have to work together. And it's fine when the systems work together, but we know that for the most part they don't. And because we have so many people incarcerated and we don't have enough staff to do any of the stuff that needs to be done, imagine the legwork that a person, I mean, just imagine how hard it is to get a refund from bonds. Right. Imagine how hard it'd be just from a grocery store to get a $5 refund with a receipt. So imagine going to the state when when a crime, whether alleged or not, we know a lot of people are locked up that shouldn't be. But I mean, I did my time. We should do that service to the folks as citizens and restore their rights as much as possible, and not continue to have them be sentenced. And so I urge you to support Time Done and get involved in Time Done. And shout out to Jay Jordan
for the work that's being done.
Absolutely.
And for all those from San Diego that went up there last month or this month, it was actually a couple weeks ago, up to Sacramento. So look for that. Time Done. You can find them on social media. Californians for Safety and Justice. You can go on there and you can follow them, sign up for alerts and stuff. So that's what the shirt is, Time Done today. Shout out to Jay Jordan and the crew at Time Done. And everybody that's working on, all the lawyers and all the people that are being affected by these. What you work with? What you work with, Bishop?
First, let me just say, because absolutely with Time Done, I'm one of those that's impacted by that.
Ooh.
And so, and you talking about 30, 35 to 40 years ago stuff that's way back then.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been in trouble since then, as far as with records and so on. And understand that it's not only about convictions, which I have some convictions, but it's also about arrests that you're never convicted of, or even you've never really even like charged by the DA's office.
They arrest you for this, but they didn't.
3 days later they drop the charges, but it's still on charges, and they make you explain it. Like with the county, if you're dealing with child foster care and things like that, they make you explain those things. Like if you committed that crime, I shouldn't have to even talk about anything that I've been arrested for. And charges.
If you haven't been charged.
Yeah. And here's the thing with that though, and I this is what I strongly believe. Even if I was charged and I went to jury and I got acquitted, I shouldn't have to talk about it because I'm innocent. And they treat you, the system, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you just arrested and that was it, and no charges filed, or charges filed and you got acquitted or whatever. It doesn't matter, man. They use it against you. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. They use it against you. And I know one of the things that will really be a benefit is that these things will be automatically purged, which is so important because, like me, I don't know what can and what cannot be purged, and different things like that. And there's some deals I made where felonies turn to misdemeanors, but those misdemeanors should be taken off the table too. You know what I mean? And so that's me. And what really bothered me, for the most part, with a lot of this is all those arrests that I had. And there was no convictions, and for various reasons, there was no convictions or even charges filed, and they still use it against me. Like if I've done that, and I got my life together. That's 30-something years ago. Why are you going back that long ago to see something? Why you want to use it? Because it's a systemic racism. There we go with that word, right? This dominant society, and that's the dominant narrative. Is that we're gonna first of all criminalize the Black community. And then once we criminalize the Black community or arrest you for drugs and for all these different things, then we're going to set up policies and rules where you can't get a job, or where you can't adopt a child, where you can't get certain type of occupational licenses and so on. Because yet we say we want you to get out of prison, get out of jail, or once you get off probation, want you to rebuild your life, for this crime that you served your time for. But now we're going to make it very as hard as we can for you to rebuild your life, right? And so with that, that's going to help out a lot, because then they won't be able to go back and look at your record. Nothing should show up, right? And that's going to be a blessing. So I'm hoping these bills do get passed. I remember when I was dealing with something, they started talking about those bills, and I really appreciate it. And Jay Jordan, of course, he's been to prison and done his time, and he's facing the same thing. He's worse than me because he's been to prison and done a long time, and his stuff is more fresh than mine. And so, but he's doing a great work. He worked with us on Prop 57 back when we were trying to do that. He came down and educated us on that as we were trying to deal with it, help it, do our part down here in San Diego. And times when I go to Sacramento, I always see him up there lobbying and things like that, trying to get stuff passed. So I really appreciate him. But the shirt I have on is All of Us Are None. I've been working with Reverend Dennis Malone here in San Diego. Chapter Dorsey is, of course, over it. The helping up north over the whole All of Us Are None. But All of Us Are None is basically dealing with what you're talking about. And they might be tagged on some of these bills because they deal with prison reentry and try to work with folks to, when they get out, that they can rebuild their life with some of the things talking about occupational licenses. They're the ones that champion Ban the Box, right? On the state level. We went up to Washington, D.C., tried to deal with Obama was in there on the federal level. And also other states are picking it up. But it started right here in California with Ban the Box. When you try to apply for a job, the first thing they ask is, have you been convicted of a felony? So now here in California, when you apply for a job, they can't ask you any of that. Later on, they can ask you if they decide they want to hire you. but at least you got through the door and they'd be able to meet you and see what kind of person you are and things like that. Sometimes they still decide that they don't want to hire you and so on, but at least you had that opportunity to get that interview. Then they can do a background check once they decide they want to hire you. So Batted Box is a pretty good start to help people at least get through the door and prove themselves and things like that. And they've done many other different things. All of Us Are None is a great work, great movement. They were working as far as with the folks in Florida also with dealing with that, as far as getting the felons people who have felons be able to vote and things. They're the ones working with the jails and the prisons now to be able to get folks to vote in prison while they're already in prison and things like that, or in jail. Whether you have a felony or misdemeanor. And I know some people are trying to, we can talk about that another day, some people have issues with like, well, if he's a murderer, he should be able to vote. But, if he's when do you lose your citizenship? I mean, that's the thing. If you're a citizen of this country and whether you're in prison or not in prison, you should be able to vote. They do it in the white countries, right? And in Norway, they do it, where the politicians go in and campaign in the prisons to get votes from the prisoners because they can vote in there. And people make laws that impact them, right? They always say, oh, we got to get the criminals and so, but the criminals are the people that's been criminalized, have felonies and have records. And most of the time they can't defend themselves, right? So All of Us Are None is one of those groups that fight for formerly incarcerated. We don't call them like inmates and all that. They use the term formerly incarcerated,
Okay.
And then there's other terms that they're starting to use now too, though.
Well, shout out to anybody that's doing reentry. And I feel like this is a good time for a shameless plug for Homework. Homework I started Homework in January. We just finished our 6th dinner and networking event.
All right. Keeping it going.
Oh man. And, just super, super grateful. Shout out to the San Diego County Building Trades Council and Tom Lemon and Carol Kim for coming alongside and really helping to bridge that gap between me and the building trades. Really, really good. Has been really cool. And this last one, and the reason why I mentioned that, it's not really a shameless plug. It's a necessary plug that I need to talk about it because I think it's important that we fill these rooms up. Our goal was to really have 25 people show up. We only work with people that have been convicted of felonies.
Right.
And so with that, we don't, and that's it. If you don't have a felony, like you're not even invited to the dinner, right? Like you have to, that has to be your story. That has to be a part of your story. And we wanted to, I wanted to really just create a space that people with felonies could come in and not be the ones sitting in the back of the room hoping nobody asked them, if they got a felony or not. So we wanted everybody to have that as their story. So this last session we have 2 unions that come every single month to talk about their trade and what they do, how to get involved. And we had a trade this past month that showed up, and a couple of folks that came to Homework are already working in this particular trade. They hire all the time. Our thing is come to the dinner so you can get the information and find out what's going on. It's important for us to be able to create the relationships with folks to really have a sense of accountability. Before we really put our name on somebody, we really want to know who you are and what's going on, and we want to advocate for you. But 2 that were there, 1 hiring right now, 1 getting ready to open up their application process. And man, one of these unions pays up to $100 an hour. I was like, man, I'm about to quit my job and go work for that. So anyway, shout out to Homework. And we believe when a person comes home, they need to work. Let's say what's up to a few of the folks that's here. We can dig into our stuff. We'll talk to the folks that have commented. I know that your princess has said something. Joy Bowser says, "Hey guys, what's up, Joy? Hey, if we bring you on real quick, will you sing? You know what I'm saying? If you're still on, we gonna need you to hit a couple of verses of Lord, Here I Stand or something. I don't know." Tom Lemon, what's up, Tom? Tom says, #time done. Absolutely, 100%. What's going on, Marlito Pesos? Wow, yes, sir. What's going down? Yeah. So, and if y'all notice, real quick, if you look down and then we'll move on. Tom posted #homework. And if you notice, my daughter had a great idea the other day. We were talking. She said, "Dad, isn't homework really about the biggest part, homework is two things. Somebody getting a job, a career. We don't say jobs, we say career. Somebody getting a career, but also working on yourself. When a person comes home, they need to work. But sometimes before you can work, you need to do some homework on yourself. So my daughter was like, isn't homework really about people working on themselves? Well, why don't you underline the me in homework? So we emphasize the me since this person working on themselves. I was like, wow. So the way I could do it right away, I said, hey, we're going to change the hashtag to lowercase HO, uppercase ME, and then lowercase WORK, because the me is bigger than the work. Working on myself is bigger than getting a career. So anyway, hashtag homework. That's the way we do it right there. Now that's why we want to change it. We want to emphasize the me in homework. So so today, what we want to talk about, you know, with the time that we have remaining, we want to talk about, really, we're going to be talking about our perspective of ADOS. For those of you who don't know what the hashtag ADOS is, American Descendants of Slavery. And there's
chattel slavery.
Chattel slavery. Chattel slavery. And there's a reason why it's necessary to make that difference. In America, at the end of the day, like, all Black people not equal in all of it, right? You might get treated a particular way, but the way America was formed and built was on the back of American descendants of slavery, not new immigrants. And so when we look at when we start talking about the discussion of reparations and who gets reparations, it's the people who built the country that were promised things that didn't get the things that they were promised that should get the benefit, not new immigrants. Just because you was treated, you know, that is not.
Define what you mean by new immigrants.
I'm talking about anybody that came over here in the last generation or two or three or four who don't have bones buried by a slave. If slavery is not in your family's genes in America, you are not owed reparations.
We love you, and
it has nothing to do with that. We are not.
You Black, whatever you want to be, you know. But when it comes to, we have a specific justice claim in America, and it's with American descendants of slavery. And a lot of times people try to twist that and try to turn things around.
We're not going to let you turn the narrative around and say, you guys are causing division amongst Black people. No, no, we're not. And don't try to dominate the narrative. That's not the case. Don't change the narrative. The narrative is that people who have slaved, if you don't have bones of slaves in America, in the ground as a part of your ancestry, you are not owed reparations. You are not. And it doesn't matter how bad you was treated. You were not. You are not owed reparations. Reparations belong to those who were promised 40 acres and a mule, who did all these kinds of.
Somebody said that when you look at that, you look at all the families of Black people who should have went through. If you calculate that today with interest, it'd be somewhere like $92 trillion.
There's no question about it. And guess what? Break bread.
Thank you.
Break bread. You know what I mean? And so that's what we're talking about right now. And so we need to make that clear. We are not trying to say that because you are not ADOS, that you don't get treated bad in America. That is not what American descendants of slavery, that is not what reparations. Reparations is not trying to determine who is being discriminated against in America. That is not what
and that's what they're trying to make out with Kamala Harris. I know we'll probably get to that a little bit later and so on, but that's not the fact.
Yeah. So so let's dig in a little bit. So we want to talk about our closing the racial wealth gap. You know, last week the topic was because one of the things they say, we're looking at some of the myths.
We were looking at education last week, I believe.
Yeah. So and just for those of you guys that are interested, this is a paper that was done by William Sandy Darity Jr., Derek Hamilton, Mark Paul, Alan Asia, Ann Price, Antonio Moore, and Catarina.
Good research.
100%. It's a paper done by the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equity. And it's on the Duke website. You can look at it. It's called What We Get Wrong About Closing the Racial Wealth Gap. And so there's all these myths, right? Myth number one we talked about last week was greater educational attainment or work effort on the part of Blacks will close the racial wealth gap. In other words, if you just work harder and get an education, you'll, and the truth is that's just not the case. We talked about that last week or whatever. The wealth gap is so different. The post-college median household net worth for the average white family is $455,000. And the average Black family post college is $141,000. For just a college education, which like no master's, no doctor, just a college, just a undergrad degree, $268,000 for the average white family, $70,000 for the average Black family. Just some college, maybe an associate degree, or just some college is $135,000. Some college for the average Black family is $18,000. It's $18,200, but we're just going with the average number. And then just a high school education, the average income, median household net worth, and this is a net worth. This isn't. And when I say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be saying income. I should be saying net worth.
Yeah, because there's a difference between income and wealth.
When you get rid of the family car depreciating value, the net worth of the American family, high school white family $118,000, high school education Black family $6,000, less than high school $82,000 for median household net worth for white family. Median household net worth for Black family with high school, less than high school, is $2,700.
Now let me just bring this out, because the research papers on it. For a white person with less than a high school diploma or what have you, that's not a high school dropout. Let's just put it like that. A white person that is a high school dropout has this net worth of $82,968.
And this is median. This is when you look at the
high school dropout.
Look at the median income for white
median household net worth. By race and education. The high school white person who is a high school dropout has the worth of $82,968. A Black person with a college degree has, what is that?
$70,000.
$70,000.
With a college degree, $70,219. That's what the college degree. You can have less than a college degree, and we're talking about when you put all the families together. When you take that's 70,000 is college. That's 70,000, and less than high school is 82,000.
There you go. I'm looking at the wrong one.
That's all right. So
and it's less, right?
Of course, yeah, it's less. And so and what we're talking about is wealth. We're not talking about necessarily the ability to earn income. We're talking about wealth, and wealth is
people get the income for I'm doing well because right. What are you worth?
Right. So that's not wealth. Wealth is not how much you make every year. Wealth is how much you got in the bank, right? You appreciate assets and all that. Wealth is the ability for you to be able to pay for your kids' college. You know what I mean? By taking loans out of your house or using your savings and stuff like that. So we're talking median. This is stuff that was done by real professors. And Sandy Darity's a leading economist. And so check it out. Myth number 2. We'll talk about this today. The racial home ownership gap is the driver of the racial wealth gap. So if Black people would just buy homes,
right, then
the racial wealth gap would close.
That's what they say.
So what do you think about that?
I think it's wrong. You just said it, right? And if you can understand what was just said about the education piece of it and the college degrees versus, a white person without a college degree, person without a high school diploma, white person makes more money than a person or has more worth than a Black person with a college degree. If you could see that, then you could see that no matter where else you go, when you talk about wealth and whatever argument you want to make, you're fighting a losing argument, or your argument is not worth listening to if you don't understand that part. Because when you understand that part, you'll understand that wealth. When you understand our worth, our net worth, when you talk about the median household income, when you look at that, even when you go to owning a home, right? Because it falls right into that category. Even when you're talking about owning a home, you have to go all the way back, right? And that's why we say reparations, you got to go back to slavery, because in this report, one of the things it talks about is that people say, well, you just buy a house and own land, that will close the racial wealth gap. But when you do the study of as it is right now, it does not, because there's so many different variables that are in there. But one of them is that a lot of times when a Black person buy a home, they don't have accumulated wealth already, right? And so you scrambling to save up money, and every penny dime you get, then you probably charge the high interest rate and other different things if you're able to get a loan to get a home. Whereas other folks, when white folks buy homes, for the most part, they already have wealth. Their net worth is already way above the person, the Black person. So you're talking about closing the racial wealth gap. And so you have a white person, a Black person buy a home, it might close it a little bit, might close a little bit, but that's not going to close the wealth gap in the sense of all of us going buying homes. That's not going to close the wealth gap where we all become equal. It'll make some difference because you own some property and you have some worth and so on, but not compared to what white people have.
Well, and I think it's important to note. So let's look at one of the disparities. The paper talks about empirical.
What page you looking at? 11.
Page 11. The evidence simply doesn't support the claim that the racial home ownership gap explains the racial wealth gap. And it talks about figure 4, which is on the following page. But median household wealth by home ownership rates for those households who do not own a home, wealth levels are low for both white and black households. So when you look at the average, when you look at the median home, family in America between black and white, households who do not own a home, wealth levels are low for both white and black households. So you're going to see that, right? Makes sense, right? Chances are, if you don't own a home, you probably don't have a lot of wealth, right? I mean, so that makes sense. But it says, however, black non-home owner households have a mere $120 in net worth. Black non-homeowner households have a mere $120 net worth, insufficient to feed a family for a week. The data indicates that white households who are not homeowners hold 30 times more wealth than black households that do not. And why? And this is the part where you look and remember, if either way, on either side, see, this doesn't, so I'm a homeowner. I mean,
you got it.
Yeah.
I thought you believe in it.
Yeah. Never mind.
Can't stop God.
I don't want to start clowning. I don't want you to get mad and walk up and turn the table and get up out of here. But so we're talking median stuff here. We're talking about when you take all people in America and you draw a line. When you line everybody up from wealth to poor to whatever, like when you go median, like the
average it out.
Yeah. The reason is, so that's why you will have some people who are like, well, I'm white, I ain't got a whole lot of money. Like, I don't have $850,000 in the bank or whatever. Right. So it's not saying that just because you're white means that you have some great advantage over everybody.
Putting it all together.
Yes, that's not what it's saying.
Right.
What it's saying is when you look statistically, and wealth is about the value of your home, the amount of cash, businesses that you own. It's net income, net worth. When you're done paying everything off, what are you worth? Like, what are you worth? And if you, because of the ability of during slavery and all these times for white people to, even though black people may have had ADOS, American descendants of slavery, may have had land, it was able to be taken with no legal recourse. Wasn't nobody enforcing the laws.
The redlining, the segregation, all of that affects us today.
And we're going to read something about redlining next. But when we look at the way that they were taking property from black people during those times, it makes sense. And what happens is, who owns that land?
Burned it down, burned down whole cities and stuff of black cities,
If they take over
Wall Street,
if they take over deeds of houses and stuff like that, who is going to say something?
Right.
So of course there are more white people in America that have property. Why? Because white people own slaves. And they have the ability to do that. No, not all white people own slaves, because that's not the point, right? We have to look at the reason why a lot of white families have more money is because their ancestors were able to have homes, land. And when you have homes and land, you can pass those things down. That's generational wealth.
And when you talk about the dominant culture, the white dominant culture, dominant society, and when you talk about how everything is based on racial economics, it's based on race to oppress a white continue to be on top. 91%, when you look at urban areas, all these different places, even in agriculture and so on, 91%, and sometimes even higher, 91% of white people own 91% of the land, right? Blacks only have about 2% of the land. So it's way disproportionate, right? And so no matter how you look at it, when you talk about, we talk about owning land, different things like that, because you use the example of a white person that is poor, and we talk about putting it all together. It's the same thing with a black person that is rich. That might be a billionaire or a millionaire. When you put all black people together and look at that medium, it's like, well, nah, man, we're not, overall, we're not doing too well.
And I think it's important to do those nuances, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's important to be able to have these conversations and people not get all like hurt. Like, these are discussions that need to be had. Like
Exactly.
there's inequities in America. Like,
Yeah.
let's face it. I mean, the society's not equal.
That's
And
right.
it's not about complaining. Like, I work hard every day. Like, I'm doing what I
Thank you.
can to change
Thank you.
my family's dynamic. Like, I ain't lazy just because I talk about this. I mean, like,
And let me just say this, based on research and study. I mean, of course, you can go back to slavery. Let's take it back to slavery, because that's what we're talking about, reparations. Blacks were the hardest working people in this country.
Mhm.
And we built this country,
100%.
made it rich and wealthy the way it is right now, because blacks are hardworking people. And blacks didn't just become lazy after slavery. That's the narrative, the dominant narrative of what white supremacy is all about. Make you think that black people are lazy. Find the most laziest black person and try to label us all that way. You know, you got lazy white people too. But when you overall look at it, research and data has shown that when you put black people, just for example, in the labor market, they are some of the hardest working people and most loyal people in the labor market. So they can't come with that concept.
And you know, one of the things that's one of the things, one of the goals of homework, really, right? Is because, like, what is one of the ways that you can change some of that legacy of home ownership is really having people able to get into careers or whatever that allow them enough money to be able to purchase
Right.
and stuff like that, to be able to have something to pass down. You know what I
Give
mean?
me a piece of the pie.
And so we want to do that, you know what I mean? And face it, in America, the place that you go to get really high paying jobs without having to have a college degree and whatever, and a place that will actually train you, bring you in, train you to do the work for 5 years and set you out on your own as a journeyman or whatever, is in the unions. I mean, it's just union work is, and that's not the only game in town. But what I'm saying is, when you look at all the stuff that needs to be done in America, like, that is one way that we can help to combat the lowering of the socioeconomic status in black families, is for black families to get money to be able to purchase these homes.
It'll help individuals, but I think overall we really got to deal with the issue of reparations.
No question about it. Getting a good career, helping communities get good careers is not the same as reparations.
Exactly.
That's not what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So yeah, for sure. So one of the things that they talked about, you just talked about this right now. Even the whole, we're looking at page 13 of this report. The path to home ownership they talked about has been riddled and entrenched with racism, right? The FHA systematically refused loan applications to black families through redlining, right? And this is a report done by Richard Rothstein in 2017. It says he made this observation. In his book, Color of Law, is concerned with consistent government policy that was employed in the mid-20th century to enforce residential racial segregation. There were many specific government actions that prevented African Americans and whites from living amongst one another. And I categorize them as unconstitutional. For example, many African American World War II veterans did not apply for government guaranteed mortgages for suburban purchases because they knew the Veterans Administration would reject them on account of their race. So applications were pointless. Why do an application? You know they're not going to let you live there or whatever, right? Those veterans did not gain wealth from the home equity appreciation as did white veterans. And their descendants could not inherit that wealth as did white veteran descendants.
Good example.
And so and again, I want to buy a house in this area because what do they tell you? If you go buy a house, any realtor or anybody would tell you that there's 3 things that you need when you buy a house. So 3 things: location, location, and location. Right? It's all about location.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Location is one thing, location is another thing, and location is the third thing.
And do you know how unless a white person or whoever is determined to move into our communities, black communities and so on, do you know a modern day way they redline, not so much with the banks and all that, or kind of keep it segregated? And I had a white person to tell me this once, is that he was geared to buy a house in Southeast San Diego. And he called the police department and said, hey, I'm looking to buy a house in Southeast San Diego. This is the address, blah, blah, blah. And I just want to know about the community and so on. He said, oh, no, that's a violent community. You shouldn't move there. There's a lot of crime and so on. And he told me this. And so he decided to look somewhere else.
When we were moving to Skyline, when we first moved to San Diego from Minnesota, we lived in East Dago first. And we were moving to Skyline. The police told my mother, you don't want to move to Skyline because it's like gangs over there and all this other kind of
stuff. And tell me who your mother is.
So my mother's a white woman. Yeah, they told my mom, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. my sister gave me some game that really kind of changed my. I was like, wow.
So I didn't look at it like that. Huh?
I had some privilege that I just didn't even think about. And I mean, I knew that I had privilege by being biracial and having a white mother, but my sister's a psychologist, and she broke me down, man, like a shotgun. I said, "Oh, I was almost on the phone, like, man, I need to rethink my whole life."
At least where you was raised.
She broke me off. My sister's very honest with me about this stuff, and but so they told my mother, man, white woman, don't move to Skyline. There's gangs over there. And my mom was just like, man, get out of here.
They say unless a person decides, no man, I ain't
my mom
listening
said,
to you.
shut up. We moved over there. Whatever. We moved over there and did nothing ever happened. So
Exactly.
But
came out to be all right, right?
I was at work the other day. And there's a couple ladies talking about Southeast. And oh yeah, you don't want to go. And it wasn't necessarily the worst thing I've ever heard. I get it, but I just had to walk out and go, ladies, come on. Why are you furthering that narrative? Like you know where more drugs is. You know what happened? The reason why the media tells you that it's more drugs north of the 8 where y'all want to live than there is in Southeast. Like, you got mothers out there, you got white mothers out there selling drugs in Carmel Valley or whatever, and they put her prom picture on there or whatever, like to make it look like she's got a devil. You sold drugs to kids. You know what I mean? You should be ashamed of yourself. Exactly. Just like anybody else that sell drugs to kids. You know what I mean? But so I was like, get up out of here. But one of the things my sister told me that I thought was just interesting, man, and it kind of blew me away. We was talking about privilege. And we talking about male privilege and all the, and my sister was like, well, you had privilege? And I was like, what do you mean? She said, can you imagine? She said, what if there were certain things that you decided weren't going to stop? There were certain things that you could do that you weren't going to be stopped from doing because you didn't have, because you had a white mother who felt like she could do anything. And you never heard you couldn't do that because your white mother never said you couldn't do that. Right. And she said, you realize mom would have never said X, Y, and Z. Like we lived in a house with a woman who said, whatever I want to do, I'm getting ready to go do it. Now she was poor. We ate the same thing every night. My mom didn't have a whole lot of money. You know what I'm saying? No question about it. Because she had biracial children. Like she had issues with certain parts of her family. She was disowned by the community. I mean, so it wasn't like we just lived high on the hall because her mom was white. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, it ain't that easy. But mentally, I never thought that I wasn't going to be able to do something. Like I just didn't get up and go, oh, I can't do that. It's like if I want to do it, you ain't gonna never tell me I can't do it. And my sister was like, wow. And so she said, maybe that's something that we need to take a look at. And I was like, man, that's kind of a trip. It's like, wow. Okay.
And and when you said it, just triggered a thought in my mind, of something that I share with folks. And I really don't know, when you talk about the mindset of the mind and how we think, in our cultures and what we hear and what people tell us and things like that, if it's repetition, it's become part of our belief system, right? Through credible authority, your personal experiences, repetitious information, your social environment, all those things impact your belief system. And I remember when I think I was about 19 years old, and I was going down to City College, and I wanted to play some football, play some ball. My buddy Kevin Williams, he was playing. His dad, Pastor Anthony, passed away, but Pastor Anthony Williams was coaching and City College, and so we wanted to go down and play some ball, and so I had to go and get some classes with City College. So I went down to City College, and my father took me down there, and he was showing me all of the different classes, different majors, different things that I can take up and I can do, and that's when the lights came on with me, and I don't know where I got the thought from, but I was like, man, I can be anything I want. But before then, my mind was locked that I couldn't do nothing other than what I was doing. I was banging and running the streets, getting high on drugs and things like that. And for some reason, I had that kind of mindset that I couldn't be anything, right? But when I looked at all of that, that's when it kind of triggered. Lights came on for me, like, man, I can be and do anything I want to do. Somebody lied to me. I don't know who was telling the lie, but that was in my psyche. So most definitely what you were talking about as far as what's put in you is important as far as what's passed down and you succeed.
In my house, my mom read like novels. My mom would read, like my sister was like, you ever thought about how much of a privilege it is to be in the house with a mother who read a lot? My mother read at least one novel every week. We're talking about 700-page novels. We have books all over the house. Like my mother read to us when we was kids and did all these things that like, you know what I mean? Like, so I was like, man, I'm not saying no other families do or just whatever, but it's like, man.
I think it's deeper than that because I know, in my house, at least my father was pretty smart. High school, he didn't go no further in high school, but he did a lot of reading and so on. And there was no subject that I can go to him and talk to him about and he didn't know. And he always read. I always see him reading every day and things like that. But I think within the Black culture and in the community that we're in, with all the oppression that you deal with, and with all the issues that you have to deal with race and being held back and with the police and all of that, there's something that's triggered in your psyche when you talk about the white man, and where you can go, what you can do, and all the things that he does. I believe that is deeper than just. I think your social environment in your home has a play, but you got to look at your overall social environment, which you influenced by.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I definitely think that's. I think that's important.
But of course, my walk of life, coming through the streets and banging and drugs and crime and all that kind of stuff. So I was around a whole lot of other different folks too, other than just in my home, and which impacted me also.
Yeah.
Which shaped my beliefs.
And no doubt. And so, at the end of the day, I just started going to college now. Like I just got my associate's degree, and I'll be 49 this year. Like even though my mother has a bachelor's degree, was pursuing post second. No, I forgot what they call that. Like a master's level education, whatever you call it. My sister, on the other hand, she's a doctor. Doctor of psychology, double major from SDSU, and she went to a Ivy League college.
Did you?
Let's take a praise break. I tried to let the little demon run around here, and my family ain't here to take care of it. Let's take a quick praise break. I'm gonna lock this demon up.
All right, be right back.
Golly, dude. Girl is so ghetto, dude. Why is she so ghetto? Anyway, so let's move on. So let's finish this point right here that this brother talked about. That the report says that, so the fact that these veterans didn't get the opportunity to take loans out on these homes, and they knew that they weren't going to purchase it, and the white veterans that did get a chance to have those VA loans, the white veterans got a chance to accumulate the wealth that came with the appreciation of that value. Mm-hmm. And that is those are the types of things that create wealth. Mm-hmm. Wealth is not created because you cannot work enough to get wealthy. You can make $200,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have appreciating assets, you're not going to get wealthy. You can't save enough.
Right.
You could, right. I guess if you're in a situation
on an individual level, but not as a whole.
Yeah, like even tax benefits and all these things that come with home ownership, like home ownership is the key. And one of the things that they talk about in here is that home ownership does not create wealth. You have to have wealth to have a home. You have to have wealth to be able to purchase a home.
That's right.
So if you cannot purchase a home, you're going to miss out on that wealth or whatever. So, so I think it's important to understand that. And further, the racialized history of housing policy in the U.S., including residential segregation, redlining, and discriminatory credit practices, have exacerbated inequality in wealth and home ownership rates, and have also contributed to the rate of return on the asset itself. Part of the persistent wealth gap across home ownership status may be explained by the fact that a home is one of the only assets in which the race of the owner affects the rate of return. Wow. What does that mean? If you can't purchase homes in affluent neighborhoods, you can, right? And if you think about Black neighborhoods where people don't want to live, and we talk a lot about gentrification. And gentrification is where predominantly Black or minority communities are neighborhoods or whatever, and then white people begin to move in, and the cost of
they run out of rooms other places, so they come back and take it.
Regardless of what the motivation is, what happens is that what we see, gentrification is the only way that a Black neighborhood increases in value is if white people move into it. La Jolla would not be La Jolla if I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Southeast is not going to be Southeast or whatever unless it's gentrified.
Yeah.
And what is that all about? Like that. So we think, so we sit around and just wait for gentrification to happen. And you know what I mean? Like, and you see predatory lending. You see people in these areas that don't understand how. And part of that is our fault. Like like I should have these conversations with my kids about owning these homes. But if my kids don't make good decisions when they get older, for whatever the reason is, whether it's because of over policing or whatever
what
the
they're
case
doing
is,
now, they're pushing folks east, right? You know, like where I'm in El Cajon, is pushing people east and really trying to move people out. You know, knocking on doors, trying to buy the homes and different things. Kind of like the same method what they did during redlining and so on. You know, they buy a home and either raise it way up where you can't afford to move, so you have to go somewhere else, or they make it so low where only this type of person can purchase a home. And I think these days, one of the things they're trying to do is they're really trying to raise the value of the property up so that, you know, only people can fill it, buy it is people with the wealth.
Well, imagine
if you're in a community where people are renting, you know, and don't have no wealth, they're not going to be able to do it.
And people don't realize like what happens when you rent. You pay $2,500 for rent. Your mortgage could probably be about the same amount.
And you paying somebody else's mortgage.
And you're increasing wealth for somebody else or whatever, right? And so one of the things that happens, and I think is important, is that when you're, you know, home ownership is it's really important. Home ownership is important, and imagine if you're a young cat that's living in a home that probably belonged to your grandparents, and you know, typically as grandparents get older, you know, they're not gonna fix the house up as much, and you're just working. You don't really have a good grasp of kind of what's going on. You don't understand the mortgage. Your grandparents might even have a reverse mortgage, or they didn't have a whole lot. Maybe they put a little money out, or blah blah blah. You don't understand what's going on. Maybe the roof leaks a little bit, or the floor needs to be done, the carpet needs to be pulled out, you need new windows, or just some things that need to be done to the house. And somebody comes by the house and they know, they looked at the record, and the record shows that you only owe $120,000 on this house. And so they knock on the door and they're like, hey, we'll give you $200,000 for this, $200,000 cash for this house right now. And you don't like, no, you just go, man, $200,000. Imagine what I could do with $200,000, instead of you realizing and being educated that you could actually just take a $150,000 loan out on the house because you got $600,000 in equity because the house is paid off. Right. And you can take $100,000 or whatever, and then, you know what I mean? And then if you're a part of homework, you're already in the trade. You know what I'm saying? You got a trade, so you can, you know what I mean? But but they're just things that we can do. So let's move on to the next thing so we can get done with this, because we've been spent a lot of time on this. But it's just important. You guys can get this study through social equity. It's a social equity study at duke.edu. So go check it out. The next thing that we're going to talk about real quick, and we got about 13 minutes left, is the Democratic debates. Did they address the Black agenda? Did they address the Black agenda? Did
you read anything on it?
I didn't get a chance to watch the debates. I don't have cable, so I can't. And I'm not going to talk about it. I can't watch it. No, it ain't illegal. That's for sure. It's not illegal. It's not. So I didn't get a chance to. I didn't get a chance. I tried to watch it online, but it was everybody's opinion. So I can't really even focus. I can't even say nothing about this. So you watch it. So you say something.
Well, I think we get duped many times with politicians, right? Because because on Wednesday, you know, I was on a focus group. With Alec Pressure. NBC reporter there, good brother, and he does some good reporting and good stories and things like that. He actually wanted me to be on there on Thursday and Wednesday and Thursday, but I couldn't do Thursday, so I did Wednesday. And then I followed up on Thursday after Bible class, follow up on the debates, you know, for Thursday and things like that. But one of the things that sometimes gets us is that just because you mention Black or Black community or whatever you want to speak on that, we think that they are addressing the Black agenda, right? Oh, well, you know, Black people, they're suffering over here. Or Black, you know, we got to do something about mass incarceration. You know, we got to reform the criminal justice system, things like that. But when you talk about, when you ask like Kamala Harris, when you ask them as far as, you know, what your priorities are, there's nowhere in there priority as far as dealing with the Black agenda. You know, I'm gonna do something about middle class tax cut or whatever. I'm gonna deal with DACA, you know, and things like that. Which, you know, if that's what you want to do, that's fine, because you know you got to address all this. But there's nothing there to address the Black agenda that's going to close the racial wealth gap, right? And so a lot of times we get played. We get played just like we got played with Obama. We get played, you know, because when Obama first started saying he ain't dressing nothing when it comes to Black folks. And so, the next term, you know, next term came. He did a few things, not far as legislation, but executive orders like with the bandit box and with consent decrees when he was dealing with police brutality and things like that. There was a few things that they were doing, but policy-wise, and as far as for Black folks to get stuff passed through, no, nothing. And then, you know, some people say, well, he's not the president, just Black people. But everybody else, like Trump, you know, he's in it right now. He's addressing his people. He's pushing forth their agenda specific. You don't care what you think. He's doing it right. But we always vote for people that don't have our interests at heart, right? For us. And one of the big problems that we're dealing with is, and it covers everything when we talk about the racial wealth gap. It covers every aspect of our life, whether you're talking about housing, talking about employment, talking about education, or whatever area you want to look at. When you talk about the racial wealth gap, and we're going to talk about that throughout our series of going through this, they don't address. So when you look at the debate, nothing was there, nothing was addressed, nothing was said in regards to policies that you're going to specifically implement that's going to address the racial wealth gap. Now, Marianne Williamson addressed reparations, but then she got cut off by Kamala Harris. You know, when she was saying something about that, and then she wanted to interject herself into the politics of what Biden did, you know, years ago with busing and things like that, and interjecting stuff like she, you know, even though she's a Black person, but like she was a American descendant of slavery, like suffering the same things that we suffer. Now, let me just say this, is that, you know, we as American descendants of slavery, those of us who have descendants, are descendants of folks who was enslaved in slavery, we have a justice claim. We have a righteous justice claim, a specific claim because of what we've been through, and nothing was never done. We've harmed even after that. You know, even when you talk about the Black Code, convict leasing, when you talk about segregation, when you talk about mass incarceration, all these different things were specifically designed to oppress ADOS, American descendants of slavery, right? But there are Black people came from all different places, like Kamala Harris, her father Jamaican, her mother Indian. She's Black, you know, born here, but she doesn't have that complete experience. And so no one's taken from her race of being Black. But what we are challenged saying here is that don't try to tap into our experience. When you talk about the busing and all that, which was specifically to hurt American descendants of slavery, don't try to tap into that experience like you're one of us when you're actually not. And not only that, but we don't even really care about that. What we care about is what your policies are, you know, what your agenda is as far as addressing the issues of Black people. And she specifically said she's not going to do anything specific for Black people. She's for everybody, you know, and that's what's been happening for Blacks for the longest, is that when you talk about everybody, what you're just talking about is the dominant culture, dominant society is going to benefit while everybody else continue to have their foot on Black people.
So, well, one of the things,
or African Americans, whatever term you want to use.
Of course.
I like to use ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, because we're talking about a specific thing here.
Well, so one of the things I think is important when we look at, like, when you look at the majority of the people, not but the ones who the Black typical talking heads, I guess, if you will, the typical people that talk about reparations that don't really understand. If you look at, like, even like President Obama, like, he didn't have an interest in doing anything about reparations because his family, President Obama has no bones in America that are married from slavery, right?
Exactly.
Father from Kenya was not in his home.
Exactly.
His mother was white. So, you know what I mean? He got a $300,000 gift from his white grandmother or whatever. Like, President Obama didn't have the same experience. And so when you look at, like, recent immigrants from Africa, places like that, 1 or 2 generations that have an actual head start when they come here and get access to certain programs and haven't had the systemic oppression and all the things that have been pounded down culturally or whatever throughout the past 4 or 5 generations or whatever, that it's easy for them to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps thing or whatever. Where
you come over here already with
100%. So a lot of the doctors and nurses, they pull a lot of the nurses that come from African countries and other places like that to come over and take those jobs. And we have to look at those things, man. It's important to do that. And so, and no matter where you come from, if you're Black, like they had that dude that was, I can't remember his name, that was when Ta-Nehisi Coates talked, and they let the brother that went before him say, I don't think reparations, and dude is Puerto Rican. Dude's a Puerto Rican guy. He just doesn't talk about it. Like, get out of here, dude. But because you're Black, you tag onto the back of ADOS or whatever,
Yeah,
and then
that's not right.
And they pick you.
You can't speak for us.
You speak right.
That's all we're saying.
Right.
You can't speak for us.
Right. That would be like some. Yeah. That, I mean, so I think it's important to make those delineations when we're saying black people.
And don't try to make it seem like, and this is where people get things confused. Don't make it seem like you're one of us. When we say one of us, we're not saying you're not black. We're saying that you're not American descendant of slavery. That's what we're saying.
And it's necessary to distinguish that.
Exactly.
So the problem with Kamala Harris saying, "Well, I had problems in busing." Of course you did, but that's because our forefathers paid a price in slavery, and that was a byproduct of something that your forefathers didn't experience. And so yes, you're getting, and there's a whole lot of white people that got punked, and people don't like to think about it, but poor white people get treated like poor black people. Like, you know what I mean? At the end of the, I mean, to a degree. I mean, we can nuance, but my point is that so what that you got treated bad? Like, there's a whole lot of people get treated bad, but society lumps all black people into one thing. And so when you have a group of,
and that's where they say we become divisive, right? Oh, you're divisive.
And it's not. It's just we need to delineate. When you look at the folks who helped build this country and all the cotton that was pulled by slaves and all the wealth that was generated through business and all the revenue or whatever, you owe those descendants and people whose loved ones helped to build this economy, you owe them. And if you don't have a dog in the fight, then you are not due reparations because you got talked to mean on the bus. You don't get to do that. Like that's not because you were caught up in some racism and busing or whatever. And that's it.
So then they say, people like Roland Martin say, "Oh, you're call you all these derogatory names because they say you have a purity test." No, we're not talking about a purity test in being black. And you want to, like you say, you had one drop of black blood, you're black. If that's what you want to claim, if you claim that, we accept you, as being black. But what we're saying is that as American descendants of slavery, when it comes to reparations and our fight for justice and our justice claim of how we've been mistreated since we brought over in chains to this country from Africa, we have a specific justice claim that other folks don't have. If you're from Jamaica or from somewhere in the Caribbean or wherever, you British or whatever you came up from over there, or whatever term they like to use now for them, then make your claim there. We're making our claim here. So if you want to help us fight that, we welcome you. I don't care if you're white, if you're running for office and you got a black agenda, we'll get behind you on the black agenda. So it's not really about race. It's about policy. It's about what we're fighting for. We have a specific justice claim. They got to understand that this movement is not going away. And I'm one of those individuals that years ago bought into the dominant narrative of mainstream blacks who said, "I'll reparate you, forget about that. You're not going to get that." So when I heard somebody talking about reparation, man, you crazy. You better get out of here with that stuff. We ain't getting no reparation, man. Let's move on to the next thing, man. What's wrong with you? But as I share with you, when I really started researching and looking at, what they were talking about and what they were asking for and so on, and knowing the work that we do and what we see every day in the community, I'm like, wow, this is what we need. I don't care how far-fetched somebody might think it is. This is something that we got to fight for, right?
Well, it's gaining
this
traction.
gives you hope, man.
It's gaining traction, and it's important. I think it's good to talk about the issues.
People don't sit down and really look at it like you did. Because when you heard me talk about it, you're like, okay, yeah, well, that sounds good. But then when you looked at it, like, wow,
I didn't realize the importance of it, and how big it actually was, and how much I actually agreed with it. And
exactly.
And I think that's
because of what we've been fighting for anyway.
I think that's true with a lot of things. That's why, I thank God. I'm not gonna get into it, but when you have certain relationships with people and people have certain views of certain folks, there's times where you sit and have conversations with people and give them opportunities to change the way that they feel, the things that they've seen and done. And they're like, man, I never really realized it like that. And giving people the opportunity to grow, I think that's important.
Right.
I think it's important that we have these conversations, and we may find ourselves disagreeing with certain people. And then eventually they come around and go, man, I actually didn't ever think about it like that. And I think through time, we learn to create those relationships with people where we can have some of those meaningful dialogues. And you know what I mean? So just let me answer a few of these questions. At least there's really no questions, but just comments. Hey, Tom says, your daughter has vision and understanding. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And she's talking about the homework, the focusing on me and homework, and the reason why we changed the hashtag. Very true. My daughter definitely has vision and understanding. No question about it, man. Shout out to my baby daughter for that. Very true. And the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I want to say that the tree was her mama because I ain't really that smart. So Marlene Peso says, break bread. We built majority of the colleges. There's no doubt. If you think about Georgetown College in Washington or whatever, they're giving what they're talking about. I heard something about them giving away tuition to ADOS that actually worked on it. Phenomenal. And there's other colleges that are doing some of that work too. I just need to be able to gather the data. Most loyal people on the job market, talking about you saying when you give black people jobs, that's typically what's going to happen. And then what does that have to do with anything else? He's talking about the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. I just talked about what that is. So I'm misunderstanding there. So we are at our time. And so
let me just say one thing before you close out, is that don't be duped by Joe Biden either, vice president who was under Obama, because they didn't do anything.
We'll give Biden a pass because he was with the homie.
Yeah, because Obama shouldn't be getting a pass. I mean, that's the reason why you have this movement right now, because these 8 years, he didn't do anything, really that was significant. To uplift black people specifically. And so Joe Biden is not going to do anything. When you look at the crime bill of 94, we look at 88 crime bill, when you look at 84, I think it was 86 crime bill, he was one of the main ones pushing with these segregationists. Former saying, no, these guys are racist or segregationists.
They never called me, boy. Yeah, well, of course they did.
And he teamed up with them. If you go look at some of the videos and some of the things that he said,
they never called me,
real harsh and rough about black people. And so on. So, I mean, what Kamala said to him is true in the sense of what he has done and the harm that he has done and so on. And he should not even be considered for a run. He needs to go somewhere and sit down, not because of his age, but because of his policies. And he hasn't presented anything yet. And I think he's still trying to make an appeal, kind of like Bernie Sanders, to that white group to vote for him. They don't really care about black people. You got to understand that. And black folks, let me just say this, and I think I said it last week, black people vote, 93% of black folks vote for Democrats. Democrats, we are the ones that take Democrats over the 50% voting range for them to get elected. So we're the ones that we're the deciding factor. If we come together as a people, if we come together with our black vote and say, unless you have a black agenda, unless you address reparations and things like that, you don't get our vote. And you could say, oh, well, you're going to get Trump back in there. Well, we can deal with that. We've been dealing with this stuff for since slavery. We can deal with that. But one thing we're not going to allow is that for you to lie to us and put the wool over our eyes and play games with us and don't do anything for us either.
Well, one of the things too, I think is important for us to understand, we don't have a true democracy anyway. So
thank you.
But so you said we have over 50%. We don't do a 51%. We have a representative democracy, but really we're a republic. You think about, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, right? So it's not a democracy. True democracy means if you get 51% of anybody that believes anything, the 49% is screwed. So we don't have.
They're trying to make it that way because
so we have a representative democracy, which is why we have
senators
and all these kinds of things. We need to understand the way government works. So we have representatives that represent us in the White House, and they're supposed to carry our votes. They're supposed to carry our agenda. So we vote particular people into these offices and senates and places like that so that they can take the needs of the people and bring them to the power brokers or whatever. So that's why it's important. Local politics is way more important than national politics for anybody.
That's right.
That's why whoever controls the local politics is going to control the agenda of the particular.
But I think with president though, like when you look at California, very progressive and liberal. But when you look at places like Florida, we look at places like Pennsylvania, look at places like Michigan, which are kind of like swing states and so on. Those states sometimes can be the deciding factor. And there's others, Ohio, there's that can really decide the vote or at least tip it over. Black people, when you come to electing a Democrat, have power there. You know what I mean? As far as winning those delegates or bringing the vote over to 50% of what you need to win those delegates or win that race in those states and so on. So it's very important for us to understand that. And I think like with us in California, it's more locally and from the perspective of how we push our politics here, right? Not just in Southeast, but when you talk about our county, because look at our board there. And so, and we need allies. We need to come together on our issues so that we can push that vote over the top where we can have people there to represent us. And I think one of the good examples of I shouldn't say one of the good examples, the thing to watch is what happened to city council, because they have a super majority. And let's see what happened. Let's see if there comes some serious issue, which one was, and they did the right thing with the resolution AB 930, what was it, 3392. But there are going to be other issues that directly impact us, and policies that we're going to see change, ordinances that we're going to see change, see how they vote to override, and then who's the next mayor. You know, that's the other important issue, right? And so we do need allies, and we do need to come together even on that. There's not enough blacks for itself to do that in the sense of the 4 or 5% or 6% that we are, unless it's a tight race, right? And most time in the especially Democratic primaries, there's tight races, and so we can really have a block vote there to really take things over the top for the individual that we want, to make them address our issues. And I don't think we're really doing that right now, but that's one of the things we need to do. So a lot of times we're divided, you know, we're scattered all over the place just like everybody else, but we need to understand we got to come together because we have specific issues, you know, specific claims.
Yeah, well, let's get off because it's 1 minute and 1 hour and 5 minutes, and we want to try to.
Oh man, we ain't going another hour. Come on, man.
I think the first time we did it, we had like an hour, 2 hour conversation. I'm like, ain't nobody listening for more. And Cass ain't even listening for 52 minutes. Can you imagine 152? But so to all you guys, to everybody that came on and look, thank you for being a part of this. Is good. For those who may watch later on, thank you. We appreciate it. To everybody that has been here, we appreciate y'all.
Amen. For sure.
Hashtag time done. Look
all
it
of
up.
us are none.
Time done. Look it up.
Look it up. Look, all of us are none.
All of us are none. And let's pay attention to some of these the politics and what's going on. It's been real. Mika just jumped on. What's up, Mika? We about to get off, but so
late to the party, Mika.
That's all right. She gonna watch it again. No big deal. You know, Mika's out campaigning, doing her thing. 51st Congressional District. So anyway, we love you guys. We appreciate everything that y'all doing. If you are doing stuff for the afflicted, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
If you're doing the afflicting, we coming after you. All right. We love you. Peace.